The Canucks are planning something insane in terms of filling their recent head coaching vacancy, with Jim Rutherford hinting at a massively polarizing name as Rick Tocchet's replacement, giving the Canucks front office a lot to consider and manage this offseason. We're going to be breaking down all that in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first, if you're enjoying this daily Canucks content and you want to stay up to date, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the 7,000 plus subscribers already following the channel so you don't miss a single Canucks update as they drop. And with that, let's hop straight into the first topic of the day, which is this coaching candidate is insane. So if you guys didn't hear the news yesterday, if you didn't, I would be very surprised. You might be living under a rock. But the Vancouver Canucks are officially in offseason mode, and the biggest move thus far happened on Tuesday afternoon as it was announced that Rick Tocchet is moving on after not accepting the team's final contract offer, which would have made him the highest paid coach in franchise history and one of the highest paid coaches in the NHL. Now, where things get a little bit interesting is Peter Laviolette was fired by the New York Rangers back on April 19th, following 2 seasons behind the bench in the Big Apple, leading them to the Eastern Conference Final in 2024, where they came 2 wins away from reaching the Stanley Cup Final. Now, does this sound a little bit familiar? Yeah, the Canucks didn't make it to the Western Final, but they were also with a coach in his first full season last year, his second full season this year, but at the same time, it was Laviolette's first year in New York, and Tocchet did take the Canucks to a division title, to the second round, 1 game away from the Western Conference Final, so kind of very similar to what Peter Laviolette was doing in New York and eventually how that relationship ended. And in Jim Rutherford's big media availability press conference he had yesterday, he was asked about not only Mike Sullivan, which he did say he's probably staying in the East, but he was also asked about Peter Laviolette. He said, "As for Peter, we had some success together. I like him as a person and as a coach. Haven't gotten that far yet, but certainly having someone you're familiar with helps. But I'm not the guy on a day-to-day basis that deals with the coach and does the day-to-day work. Who does Patrik Allvin deal with?" And he did not work with Peter Laviolette like Jim Rutherford did in Carolina. And then he followed up with it even further, saying, "So I wouldn't take him off the list at this point. He's had a lot of success in the league, and it is a good name." Now, I know you guys are going to run right to the comments right away saying that this would be an absolute mistake. This would be terrible. I'll never watch another Canucks game. Mark and I were having some very heated conversations a while ago about the possibility of that, as well as some of my other friends. And it's a very polarizing topic amongst Canucks fans. And yeah, a lot of people may not want it. He's bounced around the NHL a lot. He has a certain reputation. He's very much an acquired taste, just like John Tortorella. So we'll be bringing in a very similar coach, kind of like John Tortorella was. And we know how that worked out. Didn't work out very well. But he is one of the most experienced coaches in the National Hockey League history, with a total of 1,594 career games under his belt. Good enough for 9th all-time and his 7th all-time in career wins with 846. Peter Laviolette will certainly be in the mix for Vancouver's coaching vacancy, but there will also be another number of solid candidates too, such as Abbotsford Canucks bench boss Manny Malhotra as a former Vancouver Canucks. So we talked about Manny yesterday as a possibility. We talked about it rarely in the past 3 videos, it seems like, because a lot of Canucks fans seem to want it to happen, and we were really high on that possibility as well. Me more so than Mark, just because of the trajectory that I can see for Manny Malhotra. And I know a lot of people on social media, it's been a very hot button topic as far as Manny Malhotra goes. Peter Laviolette, I guarantee, will be just as divisive and just as triggering for these Canucks fans on social media because, like I said, his reputation, it succeeds itself. But not to forget, this guy is also a Stanley Cup champion. He was with Jim Rutherford for 4 years. Yeah, it didn't end out very well, but his first year in Carolina, he won a Stanley Cup. And yeah, there was a lot of great players on that team. It wasn't entirely coaching, but he still had a lot of success with the Carolina Hurricanes. He bounced around a lot of other teams, but he had long tenures with those teams. So yes, a lot of people would be wanting to just jump right on the wagon of saying, do not let this happen at any cost, especially when considering that the NHL and just sports in general typically seems to be a what have you done for me lately kind of scenario. And with the Canucks, it seems like with Peter Laviolette, he hasn't done very much lately. I know we played against him in the playoffs against the Nashville Predators, or he was taking the Nashville Predators to the playoffs a lot. I'm sorry. And that is something that would be something that Vancouver definitely would want to have. Very offensive-minded head coach with a lot of scorers on the team. As bad as the Rangers were, yeah, they weren't they were in the same running as the Canucks were, and we both ended up on the golf course. But when looking at the overall points, they were even more on the fringe of a playoff spot than we were throughout the rest of the season. So yeah, the Rangers, they had their fair share of struggles. They had a lot of drama and a lot of injuries, but they were able to get a lot of good goal scoring. And that's something that I think Peter Laviolette can bring over to Vancouver. Now, as a result of that, you just had a season full of drama. And yeah, Rick Tocchet, maybe that drama was too much for him and he didn't want to deal with it anymore. Maybe that was part of it. The training facility we were hearing is also another big part of it. So there was a lot of different factors for this as far as Rick Tocchet not wanting to stay in Vancouver, being close to his family, I know was another big reason as well. Going back to the Eastern Conference is another possibility as well. So there's a very much long list of things as to why Rick Tocchet ultimately is not coming back as Vancouver's head coach. But if one of those things is the drama, can Peter Laviolette handle those egos? He's been around a long time. He's played with a lot of players. He's seen a lot of personalities. He might be able to manage it. Now, do I think that the drama with Vancouver's locker room will continue? No, because as far as I'm concerned, the cancer of that locker room, JT Miller, is gone. That whole divide in the locker room hopefully is all but resolved. But now you almost have a new divide that is created in the locker room by not necessarily management, but by Rick Tocchet and management, where now the players have this divide of whatever coach you bring in next. If there's some guys that he wins over and some guys he doesn't, it's going to be very polarizing in that dressing room. So you want to bring in a coach that the players will embrace. And like we've been talking about, bring in Quinn Hughes in these conversations. Bring in Elias Pettersson. Bring in Tyler Myers. Bring in Connor Garland. Bring in Kiefer Sherwood. Bring in the leaders of this team, or the guys that are the pillars of this team that are going to try and just help the Canucks just be as successful as they can and would benefit the most by just talking with Jim Rutherford, talking with Patrik Allvin, seeing which coach they want to see in their system most, or which coach would best fit them as a player. You take a poll by that, you take the most common name, and that's the guy that you go after. I know a lot of them will probably say Mike Sullivan just because that is the best coach available right now. However, doesn't look like he's going to be likely coming to Vancouver. And I know there isn't too much to entice coaches to come to Vancouver. It rains a lot. There is no practice facility that our cheap ownership will not invest in, even after 15 years of saying they want one. There's a lot of things but the city, it is beautiful. I may be living in Windsor, but I've been to Vancouver many, many times, and it is one of the most beautiful cities in Canada. Yeah, there's a few other things going on in that city right now which are crazy. However, you bring in that coach and someone who just wants to be there. There is very much a lot of things that would entice somebody to come to Vancouver. You hear about Brock Boeser talking about it all the time, how Vancouver has become second home for him. If he didn't love this city, he wouldn't be treating it like that all the time. If he didn't love this city, he wouldn't be staying in Vancouver during the summers. He'd be running away to Minnesota every single offseason right at the drop of a hat. He doesn't necessarily do that. A lot of the players tend to stick around in Vancouver. You got Whistler right there where you can go and do some winter activities and everything else. You got Granville Island as well. You got the beautiful waterfront of Vancouver as well. The seafront, I should say, not necessarily a lake because we got all those in the Midwest. But there's a few things there where people could want to come to Vancouver. You have a young roster with a lot of hopeful players. You got Elias Pettersson hoping to get back on track, needing the right coach to fit that. That'll get him more wins rather than points, but still getting points along the way. Quinn Hughes, who's in a very big critical stage right now of running out of time on his contract while also still being in the prime of his career with many years left of that prime. So Vancouver needs to bring in a coach that will work well with Quinn Hughes, help him develop even more as a player and as a leader, and make sure that he will stay along with the coach after his contract is expired so the Canucks don't risk losing a generational talent player like Quinn Hughes. Then maybe whoever you bring in as a coach, maybe that entices Brock Boeser to stay. And then it maybe brings out the best in Pius Suter if you extend him. Connor Garland, maybe he reaches another level of his game that he wasn't reaching with Rick Tocchet. But him getting better and better every year with Rick Tocchet, that is very concerning for me because I'm very worried that wherever Rick Tocchet goes, Connor Garland is going to follow and his contract is going to be expiring after next season. So that's going to be something very alarming to look for as to wherever Tocchet goes. Keep an eye on that being possibly where Connor Garland goes next if the Vancouver Canucks cannot extend him. So there's a lot to consider here with Vancouver. And what do you guys have to say about this? Do you think Peter Laviolette would be a good choice as the Vancouver Canucks head coach? Or do you guys think it would be an absolute terrible mistake for the Canucks to make and they shouldn't even go near it with a 10-foot pole? But my question to you would be, would you rather have Peter Laviolette or Joel Quenneville in this scenario? Because right now, those seem to be our best two options out there. It already seems like John Tortorella is out as far as consideration for Vancouver. Obviously, I don't think he would want to come back to Vancouver anyways. So yeah, when it looks at what our options are for coaches, it's a little bit slim pickings right now. Maybe Tampa fires John Cooper and we can just snatch him up. If that's the case, you go and get John Cooper right away because you probably won't get Mike Sullivan. However, if you can't get him and the Tampa Bay just decides to keep him around, then you might have to go with Peter Laviolette as your next best available option, which a lot of fans, they might not like it. However, it might not be the worst option out there, and it won't be the worst case Ontario in the slightest, I would think. But let us know what you guys have to say down in the comments all about this. Let us know what you guys think about Jim Rutherford's comments on all of the Peter Laviolette stuff, on his entire press conference, things he was talking about Willander, and some other things that we're going to be covering in some videos coming up, because there was so much to cover in that, so you guys won't want to miss it. But with that, I've been your host, Griffen. Take care.